If you're asking me when is it going to be generally available to the American public so we can begin to take advantage of vaccine to get back to our regular life, I think we're probably looking at late second quarter, third quarter.
No, I think he made a mistake when he said that. It's just incorrect information. And I called him, and he didn't tell me that, and I think he got the message maybe confused. Maybe it was stated incorrectly. No.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't want to create a panic.
Welcome to Foursquare, the digital video show where politicos get together every week and chop up the news of the week. My name is Eugene Daniels. Joining me virtually, as always, are Tim Alberta, Laura Barone Lopez, and Ryan Lizza. Hello, everybody. We were off last week.
Hey there.
Good to see you guys again. Very lovely to see you. I also feel like we need to update that intro because my hair and everyone's hair looks a little bit different than it did when we first started this 5 months ago in the old days. Today, we are starting with a lightning round called Long Term or Long Gone. You guys have heard this before. I play a soundbite from a politician, and these three have to tell me whether or not they think it's going to have a lasting, actual impact on the election. So let's see what we have today.
A moment of talking to somebody, going through this with Fauci or somebody who kind of, it caused a pivot in your mind, because it's clear just from what's on the public record that you went through a pivot on this to, oh my God, the gravity is almost inexplicable and unexplainable.
Well, I think, Bob, really, to be honest with you,
sure, I want you to.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't want to create a panic.
Now, this is something we've been talking about for a little while, but we didn't have a show last week. So wanted to bring this back up to the group to see if you guys think this is going to have any kind of lasting impact on the voting that's going to start happening pretty soon in many states, mail-in voting. Laura, I'm going to start with you. Long term or long gone?
I'm going to say long term on this one. Also, because not only are we still talking about it maybe a week later, and is it still front and center on cable news, but a round of even more Democratic ads by outside groups, by Biden himself, are featuring that specific clip in battleground states.
Tim, what about you?
Yeah, what Laura said. I mean, for two reasons. Again, the fact that we are still talking about this a couple of weeks later shows that unlike 99.9% of things that have happened during the Trump presidency, this has staying power. And second, Democrats aren't going to let people forget about it. You're going to see millions more in paid media replaying that soundbite over and over and over again for the next 2 months.
Ryan, are you going to give me 3 for 3, long term or long gone?
You know, I always say long gone because I think I think I've been right about all of them so far.
I got
But this one is central to the election. This is an election about Trump's handling of coronavirus, and maybe voters don't remember the details of this quote, but this is, it's September. People are starting to pay attention. People are voting by mail. This will have an impact. This is long term. Woodward released this book with maximum impact.
So for long term, I think we all can kind of agree it has to be something that like fits a theme that's already in process, right? Like if the theme and the narrative is that Trump doesn't care about you and how he acted in COVID, this fits that theme. So maybe it keeps coming.
Yeah. And it has, one of the parties or the outside actors, as Tim or Laura, I can't remember who said this, using it in the ads, that keeps it going. But so many of the Trump insanities just kind of are, he said 10 crazy things the other night in that town hall, and half of them will be forgotten.
Yeah, he said that people don't like masks and that waiters don't want to wear them.
He did say that. We don't even have time to talk about in this show, or even if we had 24 hours of cable news. We have passed, all of us, 6 months of social isolation because of COVID-19. You all know this, you've been at home. Places have begun reopening, though, adding outdoor restaurant spaces. Kids are going back to schools in certain cities and states. At the same time, the United States is still losing about 1,000 people a day. 1,000 people a day to COVID-19. We're nearly at 200,000 deaths for the official count, 200,000 American deaths for the official count, and 6.6 million Americans have contracted the virus at some point. Robert Redfield, the head of the CDC, testified at a Senate hearing on Wednesday. Good God. He reiterated that the most important and best way to beat the virus is by masking up. He said if all Americans wore one, the virus could be contained in as little as 6 weeks. Let's take a look at what he said about a vaccine, though.
I think there will be vaccine that initially be available sometime between November and December, but very limited supply and will have to be prioritized. If you're asking me when is it going to be generally available to the American public so we can begin to take advantage of vaccine to get back to our regular life, I think we're probably looking at late second quarter, third quarter, 2021.
Just hours later, the president had his own press conference and completely contradicted his CDC director. Take a look.
I think he made a mistake when he said that. It's just incorrect information. And I called him, and he didn't tell me that, and I think he got the message, maybe confused, maybe it was stated incorrectly. No, we're ready to go immediately as the vaccine is announced, and it could be announced in October, could be announced a little bit after October. But once we go, we're ready.
You've been paying a lot of attention to this whole time. That timeline feels a little bit hard to believe. Even if the vaccine is ready to go in October, you still have to mass produce it, you have to distribute it. Laura, what are you hearing from experts? What are they saying about the vaccine in this timeline?
So every expert, including the CDC director himself, including Fauci, say that it's much more realistic that a vaccine would come online next year. And even then, it's not going to be mass produced or mass available to everyone. It would first go to people who are potentially more vulnerable to the virus, who would need it first. And also, because of the fact that Trump has been saying so often that a vaccine will be available by potentially the end of October, and is really applying this pressure for a speedy dispersal of one, 9 pharmaceutical companies earlier this month put out a statement saying that they would not release any vaccine unless it had gone through the rigorous amount of testing, and if they found that it was effective and that it was safe to be mass produced for the public. And these are companies that are competing amongst themselves to produce this vaccine. And they're saying that because they also want to reassure the public and push back against what the president is saying.
Ryan, the president has only focused on and with this intense, extremely positive, sometimes very misleading messaging on the pandemic, right? Like we heard that's at the core of the Bob Woodward book and what the conversation they've been having. And it's created a fault line in the culture wars we already have in America. Every single thing is politicized, from the vaccine, the masks, the social distancing, the closures, the schools, all of it. How risky is that for him? I feel like we've had this conversation maybe a little bit, but we are much closer to the election. How risky is it that the lives that people are living are not in line with what he's saying and how he's trying to make people feel? Because, it's probable that 200,000 Americans would have died by the time people go vote in November.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's everything. It's the reason if he loses that he'll have lost. You could argue that it's remarkable that given how he's mismanaged this, how he has failed to rely on his top scientific advisors, how he's failed to break the back of the pandemic, that he's not in the 30s, that he still is in the 40s. And to me, it's amazing that he has been able to message to his own voters this sort of alternative narrative about a deadly disease and turn it into, as you point out, Eugene, this sort of political cultural issue where a lot of diehard Trump supporters doubt the science about this, think it's not a serious disease, are skeptical of social distancing and masks, and have kind of glommed on to this fringe idea, really, among the health community about herd immunity, or herd mentality, as Trump called it the other night. And I think it's the reason that he lost that chunk of college-educated voters that gave him a chance in 2016, and has not been able to do anything to win them back all year. And this race, by the numbers, has remained incredibly static.
Tim, let's say the experts are wrong, Trump's right. There is a vaccine in October, which would be convenient timing because of voting. Is it enough for the president to be able to say, Pfizer's made a vaccine, it's great, it's perfect, and you can get it soon at some point? Would that be enough to erase all of the other failures of the administration when it comes to how he and they have messaged and handled this pandemic?
That's a hard question to answer, and it would depend on who you're asking. Look, just anecdotally here, I've spent a lot of time talking with voters in the last 6 months, mostly in Michigan, but I've taken some reporting trips to Ohio and Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and elsewhere. The voters who tend to disapprove of the president's performance don't tend to talk about that performance in a way that suggests that he could suddenly salvage his standing with them because of the proximity or the speed of a vaccine becoming available. So it seems a little unlikely. And look, ultimately, I think the president continues to put himself in a really difficult position here, because most voters across the political spectrum, they do have concerns with science and with medicine being politicized like this. And, this notion that the White House is pressuring the scientific community, as our great colleague Dan Diamond has been reporting brilliantly over the last couple of weeks, that political appointees have been exerting undue influence over the scientists and over the epidemiologists and the people who are actually paid to study this stuff and really know the numbers and inform the medical community on best practices. I think that's freaking a lot of people out. I also think that when you have the director of the Centers for Disease Control testifying under oath in front of Congress saying, look, this is X, and this is what to expect from X. And then the president comes out an hour later and says, no, this is Y, and this is what to expect from Y, and that guy's dead wrong. It puts people in a really uncomfortable position, including his own supporters, where they can only believe one of two people. You can believe the CDC director, or you can believe the president. You can't believe both. And for as loyal as the president's core base is, to Ryan's point a minute ago, this isn't just about the base, it's about the coalition. It's about the broader coalition of voters you bring together. And within the outer rungs of that coalition, you have voters who are freaked out by the sort of thing that they saw yesterday, where the president is openly contradicting his own CDC director, who seems to have a pretty good grasp on these things.
Lots of things moving, and that politicization of the CDC we've been talking about, we'll continue to talk about. And for all of you watching, our healthcare team and our politics team have been doing some great stuff. Like he talked about Dan Diamond and that team working on what the CDC and what's happening right now. It does make a lot of people. Time for counter programming, my favorite part of the show. You three have 30 seconds to take our minds off of the world we're talking about right now, give people some news that we aren't covering in this episode. It can be politics, I guess, or otherwise. I will start with Tim.
Okay. It's politics, it's sports, it's the best of both worlds.
Everything.
The Big Ten is coming back. The Big Ten Conference has reversed its decision to cancel the college football season. They will begin play in October. This is interesting from a political dimension because the president of the United States waded in. He called the Big Ten commissioner. He exerted some pressure on him to bring football back, and then predictably he is going to take credit that he doesn't really deserve because he didn't really have anything to do with this decision ultimately. Why are you holding up already? You're just
this 26 seconds. You got to know.
You can't hold it up at 20.
You got the gist.
Honestly, anyway, Big Ten football is back, and choose your own adventure on whether or not you approve.
Yes, I just want you guys to be prepared that you're being
hold it up at 30. Come on.
I would do. That's how I would do it. You're right. Next time, Ryan, how about you?
My counter programming is Joe Biden. Joe Biden is the Democratic nominee for president, but
really,
what?
Oh man!
I went to his press conference yesterday in Wilmington. Honest, did the three of you know he had a press conference yesterday?
Not until you told us.
Texted all of us about it.
All right, fair enough. It was sandwiched in between two insane Trump, press conferences or interviews. And I was just struck sitting there. One, Biden takes very few questions. Two, he doesn't say anything newsworthy. And three, Trump brackets him with a lot of Trumpy stuff. And I don't know if it's by design or what. Well, I'm way over. But it is, Joe Biden is like, it's not breaking through. Of course, he's winning, so maybe it's fine.
Do you think, and no one has the answers, but it feels interesting because that was one of the issues with Hillary Clinton in 2016, right? She couldn't break through. And it feels like we're having some of those same issues this time around.
I mean, obviously coronavirus is a big part of this. Yeah. So she didn't have that same limitation. But it's just interesting to see how they are okay with kind of limiting him still, even deep into September.
Yeah, we're not very far, 47 days away.
Called on. Whose question were you going to ask? Mine or Laura's?
I was going to ask Laura's. Laura if we can just go over time here. Laura had a great idea for a question. For viewers, when we do a White House briefing or any briefing, we kind of all talk and figure out what's a good question. And maybe I shouldn't say it, Laura, because
no, don't say it. Don't.
What kind of tease?
All right.
All you know is that Laura wanted to ask a very insightful policy question, which has real-world ramifications. And I wanted Ryan to ask Biden about Big Ten football because one of those things would have led the nightly news in 5 battleground states.
They were both very good. They were both great questions, actually.
Mine would have made news too.
More superficial than Laura.
Yeah, for more policy ones.
All talented question writers on this team. It's very good. Laura, I'll let you finish us up on counter programming.
So Biden as well, but talking about Latino voters, specifically young Latino men. So I wrote about Arizona this week and how Latino men, young ones in Arizona, appear to be a little bit interested in Trump. And so he's doing slightly better with them than he has in the past few months. Biden's support is soft there. It's not that it isn't movable because even though 42% of young Latino men, so those under the age of 50, say that they support Trump right now in Arizona, only 26% of them said that they would most likely still support him at the end of the day. So there's room for Biden there, and that's going to be key at the margins.
Very close election that we're anticipating. I feel like it'll either be a blowout for someone or very close, and those marginal pieces are really important. We are 47 days, if you guys can believe it, from Election Day. That could turn into Election Week, depending on how ballots are counted, those mail-in ballots. But we're also just about 2 weeks away from what will probably be a historic debate between President Trump and Joe Biden. These are two men with very, very different styles. One is probably one of the most scripted presidential nominees we've ever seen, and the other is not scripted at all. Ryan, what do we know about how these two men and their campaigns are preparing them for this knockdown, drag-out?
Not too much has leaked out. Biden's talked about it a little bit, that he's starting to prepare. Usually before the debate, neither campaign likes to reveal any preparations because they want to make it sound like they barely, studied for the big test, right? So to keep expectations as low as possible. Sort of been notable that Trump has been describing Biden as, in cognitive decline and someone who can barely put two sentences together and needs a teleprompter, because obviously that all serves the purpose of greatly lowering expectations for Biden. I think the interesting question, we kind of know Trump's MO in these debates. I think the interesting question is how does Biden take on this extremely unusual debater in Trump? And I'm actually writing something for next week about this, and I've been going back and looking at all Biden's debates and all Trump's debates. And I think the main question for Biden is, how much do you confront the Trumpiest parts of Trump, fact-checking him in real time, calling him out when he lies, because he will and he does, and how much do you kind of just step back from that, present your own message, and think only about your own talking points, and not kind of get in the muck with Trump. And I don't, I think that's the main dynamic to watch in terms of how the Biden folks, deal with that. If you remember in the primaries, Biden didn't really mix it up too much. He wasn't attacked all that much, but he was a fairly reserved, laid back debater. I think a lot of people didn't think that he, won most of those debates on kind of style and performance points. Obviously didn't matter. He won the nomination. So I think that's the main question the Biden campaign is trying to figure out now.
Tim, Ryan touched on a little bit about these expectations, right? Like, debates depend a lot on where the expectations are set. In 2016, the bar felt pretty low for President Trump, really high for Hillary Clinton. Is that where we're finding ourselves 4 years later, with Biden being set up as the person who probably has a little more to lose with these three debates?
Yeah, potentially. Although, look, I think noticeably the Trump world has really pulled back in recent weeks, starting with the Republican convention. They've really pulled back hard from this message about Biden being this bumbling idiot who can't put a sentence together, to Ryan's point. That seems like a pretty surefire acknowledgement of the tactical error. This is George W. Bush 2000 all over again. You paint somebody to be this moron, and you lower the bar so low that they crawl over it, and suddenly they've won, and they're receiving all these accolades. So the Trump folks and the president himself have been, I think, smart strategically to stop lowering the bar for Joe Biden. The interesting thing that really strikes me, and I don't mean to steal any of Ryan's thunder from the piece he's working on, but I am fascinated by the role reversal here, because Eugene, you described Biden in your open to this segment about being one of the most scripted presidential nominees we've ever seen. But for most of Biden's career, he was a pretty aggressive, shoot from the hip guy, and he was not scripted. And in fact, when you go back and watch that 2012 VP debate with Paul Ryan, Biden's entire sort of stylistic goal in that debate was to screw with Paul Ryan, was to throw him off of his tempo, get into his head, agitate him. So the whole debate, Biden is rolling his eyes, he's throwing up his hands, he's laughing, he's shaking his head, he's interrupting Ryan constantly. And Ryan, you could see it was getting to him. It was sort of agitating him. And this is going to be a total role reversal, right? But Biden is going to be trying to be the straight man here, and Trump is going to be determined to get Biden to lose his cool, because we know Biden is prone to losing his cool. We know that when he's confronted, whether it's by an auto worker or by, a guy at a town hall who he challenges to a push-up contest, like, Biden doesn't always respond well to somebody kind of confronting him forcefully. And you can bet that that's a huge part of the Trump strategy here.
I want to challenge all three of you to a push-up contest. We should. Why haven't we done that?
I'm ready.
That's how we'll do. That's how we do our. That's how we do our.
Probably with all of us.
Yeah.
Push-ups. Laura, I want to bring you in and finish us off here on this topic. Incumbent presidents seem to have a bit of an issue during their very first debate. Come to mind first, President Obama in 2012 with Mitt Romney. Trump is not the best debater. So how high are the stakes for him? Because it can't just be that these only matter for Biden.
Yeah, I don't think, but I mean, by no means is Biden the only one that has something to lose with the debates. Trump also, could not do well, especially because he also, just to provide a check, I guess, on Tim and Ryan, he also doesn't do well when people confront him. We've seen that in the press conferences that he's been in. And he also sometimes, when he's then confronted, he stumbles into saying something or admitting something out loud. We say this a lot about President Trump, which is that he says the quiet part out loud. And that's what he did with Woodward. And so if he continues to reveal things like that on a debate stage, that's also harmful for him. And Biden, he definitely is prone to react if he feels as though he's being attacked, if someone says something that he strongly disagrees with. I would argue that once in a while, that's also when voters like Biden the most, at least based on what I heard on the campaign trail before COVID happened, which was that voters liked when they saw him get a little angry or confront people with his own views because they felt as though it was the more authentic Biden that they've watched for so many years, as opposed to the scripted one that we're seeing more and more of.
Go ahead. Mike Tyson, baby. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in. Listen, it is one of the, I don't know if it'll be the first debate, but I can guarantee you guys, I bet my life savings on it. In one of these debates, Joe Biden, who has been so carefully stage managed for this entire campaign, Trump is going to trigger something in him, and he's going to open a cut like in Rocky IV, and Biden is going to just be like, you know what, the hell with it, and he's going to let it rip. And suddenly it's going to be that proverbial boxing match where it's just a slugfest, and these guys throw out all the strategy, and they're just swinging wildly at each other. And when that and that's something Hillary Clinton never did, by the way. Clinton really never allowed Trump to sucker her into that kind of a brawl. It's going to happen with Biden, and when it does, it's going to be pretty entertaining.
He's got to bring up Hunter. Somebody has to bring up Hunter.
Yeah, I guess I don't necessarily think that the brawl, it's hard to tell if the brawl would actually even hurt either of them with voters.
So Biden has literally talked about like taking Trump behind the building for a fight. So it wouldn't even be news.
Beat him like a drum, he keeps saying.
Beat him like a drum.
It's such a weird, they're too old to be fighting or even talking about it. Really quickly, I want a yes or no from you guys, and that's it. Do you think that in this 2020 world we're living in, we know both of these men, neither of them are new to the world. We are as polarized as we've ever been. Everyone kind of has very concrete ideas about how the world works. Do these debates matter? Laura, you go first. Yes or no?
Yes, because of early voting.
Yes or no? Tim. Yes. Thank you for following the rules. Ryan.
No.
No.
But they could.
There you go. Always hedging our bets here.
Under the one, so I'm saving myself goodwill later.
Right. Just one day. Thank you all for joining us and watching. As always, you can watch us right here every single week covering politics. It's only political.